Hi, Ava.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. We have Ava Nikunen here today with us, talking live about her show. If you guys will excuse the display, it's the best that we can do without putting holes in our home wall, to try to give you an idea of the entire collection altogether. So we'll go through each piece today, and we'll talk about the show as a whole, as well as anything else that Ava might find that she'd like to add as we get to know her a little bit better today. So as you guys all know, if you have questions, please put them out there, and we will definitely address them throughout the live story today. So Ava, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about your exhibition. I know there's some themes like Victorian aesthetics, for instance, that play a large role here. What inspired you to cultivate that style? And tell us a bit more about the characters and the stories that you're creating in this body of work.
Yeah, so I took a lot of inspiration from the Victorian stories. That's a huge inspiration for me, and just it's kind of like a Victorian daydream. I would kind of describe it. So there's a lot of characters inspired by stories like Alice in Wonderland and like books from that era. Like Jane Eyre is a big thing for me, so I always kind of go back to that and kind of take themes from those stories and try to create my own from those. So it's loosely kind of like a daydream into a Victorian fantasy land. That's how I would describe it, I think.
Absolutely, I see that, and I think so too. And regarding your last solo show you had with us, how would you explain the difference in theme or in story?
Well, for my first solo show with you, it was a bit more nature themed, I think. So I had more forest-inspired creatures and animals and birds, and maybe a little bit more of kind of like Russian aesthetic. I really enjoy that too. I'm from Finland, so I'm right at the border of Russia, so I take a lot of inspiration from that kind of art. I love Russian art, the decorative style and everything. So I always kind of try to mix all the inspirations from that decorative art and into this new collection is more like a bit more Western, I think.
Yep, I was going to say
with
that
more
too.
Victorian inspiration.
And do you find that the folklore out of Russia also inspires your work? Maybe not this body of work, but other pieces you've done?
Yeah, definitely it does. So I love all those stories, and I actually had a chance to go to Moscow to see all the beautiful art they do, like amazing
Oh, wow. And the
fairy
architecture
Russia.
too.
Yeah, architecture, everything. So I'm really inspired by that, and I really love the small detail and all the colors in those paintings. So.
And for everyone tuning in, we have Ava here today, and this is her body of work. The bulk of these pieces, starting from over here and moving, are oil paintings. I believe they're all oil on panel. And then we have 3 works on paper, as you guys can see over there. We have the drawing.
Yeah, I love oil is my preferred medium, but I try to mix it up a little bit to add a couple of it's a watercolor and gouache paintings to the smaller ones, and then one graphite drawing. I really also enjoy graphite. So.
And what pursued you to look into these mediums for works in your show? Is it just kind of having fun with the different material, or do you think that visually it worked better with the imagery you were working on?
I always really like to experiment, so I do really enjoy oil painting, but it's a little bit of a different process than watercolor painting. So with watercolor, I can kind of go straight into the subject and do the whole painting just in a few sessions. And the oil painting is more of a going with layers, so it's a much longer process to do oil.
And you were able to work on, I'm sure, a couple oils at the same time because of the drying period.
Yes. Yeah, actually for this collection, I think I worked on all of them at the same time. Maybe I finished a couple of them in the first couple of months that I worked on the show, but then all the others I worked on them simultaneously because you have to wait for layers to dry. So it's much better to just have all of them, and then when you're waiting for one to dry, and then you just pick up the next one.
So have you then, prior to working on this body of work, did you have the ideas laid out in a way, whether it was in your head or through drawings or another media? This way you were able to kind of know what to work with first as far as each painting went, or did you have another strategy that you worked with?
Do you mean in terms of what medium I used for each character, or
well, how you started the show? So because you have a lot of figurative pieces, you have some animals as well. Knowing what medium you're going to be working with, did you have like the design of the show thought of prior, or is it something that kind of came to you as you worked?
Yeah, I had a loose layout in the beginning. I knew the theme, like the Victorian fantasy theme, and then I kind of just wrote down for myself like the characters that I wanted to paint, and I enjoy painting people and animals just the same, and I really enjoy cats and rabbits, especially.
Yes,
in animals.
us too.
And I just thought that like the white rabbit is a huge inspiration for me. I think the theme of the white rabbit, it's like the creature that takes you. It's like the portal fantasy. You call the genre of like Alice in Wonderland, like finding like a magical portal into another world. So I knew that I really wanted to use that symbolism. So the white rabbit is like that symbolism for me. And I just, of course, when you're working on a collection of paintings, some things might change as you're working on them. So maybe at first I had some paintings that I was planning to do, but then changed them a bit, like in the process. But I had everything almost laid out from the beginning when I started working. So,
knowing you, I would guess that's how you work too. But it's nice to hear you talk a bit more about what you went through and how your process unravels itself. So another element in these works in particular that stand out are the addition of butterflies. So tell us more about what they represent to you and what they mean in your paintings.
Yes, I wanted to have some element in the paintings that would be almost in all of the paintings from the show. So I talked about the kind of like Victorian daydream theme, and for me, like the butterfly represents the magic of dreaming in all the paintings. So this painting that you're filming, it's called the Daydreamer. So for me, I usually try to leave for the viewer to interpret the painting. But if you would ask me like what it means, it's like the courage to be a daydreamer, because all the artists have to be, even though all this stuff going on like around us, you still have to have the courage to be kind of a daydreamer. So that's what it was for me. And this character here, she's the dream maker. So she's kind of like maybe like the fairy godmother character almost. And that's also a theme I really, really enjoy. So she's kind of like maybe she's the creator of the dreams of all the characters in the show.
And that makes perfect sense. And she has a very strong presence as well. She's one of the first girls that we've had painted by you that actually has white or kind of like a blondish blue hair. So was that a symbolic choice, or was it aesthetic?
Yeah, I really love the painting white hair, and actually I find myself painting this kind of character quite often with white hair and a blue dress. It's it's kind of like a personal memory for me. It's a doll from when I was a little kid, and I got it as a present. She had like a blue dress and white hair. So I kind of I just when I paint these characters and I just start remembering stuff from my childhood and everything. So I just remember it's a very nice memory with me and my mom, the doll. So I think it comes from there.
A lot of the females we have received from you tend to have, sorry for the glare, an auburn or a brownish red tone like this. So who is this person or this character?
This character, the painting is called How Does One Become a Butterfly? And for me, it was kind of like always like everyone can interpret it like how they want, but for me, it's kind of when you're always like, sorry, doubting yourself and everything, and like, am I good enough? And just thinking about like, every like all the pressures of today's world, like, am I pretty enough, good enough for this world? So that's kind of like what for me. So, and maybe kind of like finding your potential, having courage to have potential.
Yeah, and to kind of feel a bit more free, perhaps, as butterflies
suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the butterflies, I think they also like represent like beauty and dreaming for me as well.
Yeah, for many, I think that it's kind of like a bittersweet experience when they come across butterflies, as they may see their loved ones that they've lost, or they may see a symbol of freedom and of going new places and being uninhibited. So yeah. One of the beautiful things about their inclusion is that depending on the viewer, they're going to have their own interpretations as far as what they might represent and who these figures are. But it's always really nice to hear from your end too, because you're living with these characters in your daily life. Yeah. And you're getting very intimate with them as you paint them. So in this situation, it is, it's nice to hear. I try not to have you guys talk too much about it so people can come to their own conclusions. But in this format, I think it's a really wonderful thing to share.
Yeah, it's always some collectors really love to hear what the artist thought, and some people maybe prefer to put their own story in the painting. So yeah, it all kind of depends.
It does, and I think now more than ever we need artist stories and the worlds and the feelings you take us to kind of take us away from other things that we don't want to think about. So while I'm on this painting, I just want to show everyone the details of it, because there's a really beautiful color effect in the butterflies, as well as really nice dewdrops and a really beautiful attention to the floral. There's a lot of really gorgeous details in this show. And I mean, one of the things that stand out to me are the use of your blue flowers. I believe they're roses. Is that correct?
Yeah, blue roses, yeah.
I seem to, not in reality so much, but in painted pictures, have an affinity towards blue roses, and you just did a really gorgeous job in giving each one so much detail and life. So hopefully you guys can see that. Yep, foliage is really, really lovely.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I have another question. So I'm gonna follow the butterfly. So one thing that I think you do quite well is your depiction of male characters. There's something so handsome and so timeless about the way you portray your male figures, and I don't know, there's an air of mystery to them, and there's definitely a very strong sense of story behind each time you depict them, which is a challenge because we find that a lot of artists, don't depict males in our genre, and if they do, they become a little more specific instead of symbolic. So I do think that you achieve that symbolic and poetic manifestation of the male personality here. So tell us a bit more about why you choose to paint males and how you go about it and the stylistic rendering of them.
This painting in particular is very much inspired by like the dark romantic character from the Victorian novels. That's one of my favorite themes. So, and I always I really enjoy painting males. It's a bit more challenging, but I usually people really seem to enjoy them, so maybe I should paint them a bit more, I think. But yeah, and the way I approach the characters, I really don't want them to particularly look like anyone. So like my favorite style of paintings is like from the 1800s or like 18th century paintings where the characters are very stylized. So they only have like elements from the real person that was the model for the painting, but they don't really look like that in the painting. So it's not straight realism. So that's how I approach like human characters in my paintings. And
Yeah.
and this character here, this is it's called somnium, which is a dream in Latin. So, and he's also kind of this a bit dark character, but like redeemable character, like they are in all the Gothic romantic novels. So maybe that's what I was thinking about when I was painting it.
I think you achieve that. And again, what you had said, you're not depicting one particular person, but so much more than that. And I think that it makes your work so relatable and enjoyable, where people want to have these pieces in their homes because they reflect more than just an individual. They're a story, and they're nostalgia, they're an emotion, and whatever it is that, you know, these people who are fortunate enough to have the work grow to see them as. So again, so you guys have a quick view. So the show itself, Let the Dream Begin, and the title of many of the works have the word dream in them. I know that this show is heavily inspired by Victorian aesthetics and fairy tales coming from the Western side of things. But why so heavily use the word dream and have the idea of the dream in many different manifestations as such an integral part of your show?
Yeah, it's I always use art as an escapism from like real life. So I approach the imagery like I want it to make me feel better and kind of like let me escape to like another realm where I can meet different kind of characters. So that's kind of like the dream for me. So I'm always like dreaming about the chance to find like a magical portal to a different world. So that's I think that's an ongoing theme in all of my paintings. And the animals, they're real animals, but they have kind of like a human personality.
Yes.
As well, kind of like in Dreamlands, like Alice in Wonderland and those kind of stories.
Absolutely. I think that your works do transport us someplace else. And, you know, a common tie to a lot of the works we show and a lot of the work that I love is the fact that you're taking me someplace new and you're allowing me to escape my reality, to go to one that has a bit of mystery and a bit of beauty and quite a lot of story. And so, you know, for someone who loves this, you know, genre and work like yours, I also love fantasy books, and I love science fiction and stories that, you know, transport me. And so I think that they go quite hand in hand because there's always some level of magic and a paranormal, you know, aspect to many of the works that we exhibit, and some of your work too. And that can definitely tie into the, you know, the human-like qualities of your animals. It's a lot of times the expression, and I think the look in their eyes that really give that off. So I know that you had said you really like to have, you know, cats and bunnies depicted in your work. Have you had cats or bunnies as pets before? Have you experienced them in reality as far as why you love them so much? Or is it just kind of the integral roles that they play in a lot of stories that you've read?
Yeah, there are, I think, many reasons. I think cats and rabbits go really well with the fantasy genre. So that's one reason, but I do love cats. I've never had a cat of my own, but my cousins and my friends have had cats, and I'm always the one looking after them when they want to go on holiday. So I have a lot of experience with cats, and I had a dog many years ago, but never had a cat. Maybe someday I will, but I do enjoy painting them a lot. So,
Yeah, I can
and
tell.
yeah, they're kind of like mischievous creatures, and yeah, I really love depicting them. You kind of never know like what they're up to.
It's true. They are very mischievous creatures. And this guy in particular has that look, as you guys can see, his little tongue sticking out, which is a super, super sweet touch. He's a beautiful cat. His fur is gorgeous. The coloring, the almost autumnal change of season here, if you guys can take a look, which is a little different from the other palettes of the other pieces that are in this show. This one is almost representing a time of transition or change, assumably because of the autumn palette, or what's coming to be the autumn palette. Do you mind telling us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so this painting is titled Harvest Time. And yeah, I kind of, with this one, I escaped a little bit from the color palette of the other paintings, which are more like a bluish, most of them are like bluish greenish tones. And the catch painting is a bit more autumn themed. And I just, for some reason, just this character came to me with, I do love Halloween, so I had to paint some pumpkins in some, like one of the paintings. So this is just like what came to me. And like for me, the painting, it represents like the time when you have worked really hard, and then you have the harvest time when you can like gather all the fruits of your labor. That's like what I was thinking when painting this, but people can put their own story there. But
Absolutely.
I just thought that it represents like autumn is my favorite season, so I also had like I couldn't help painting something with autumn themes.
I think the colors came out really beautifully. And again, you have that little butterfly who seems to visit us in every painting. You guys can get a look at
Yeah.
that. And he looks very satisfied with his little jar. He's just really, really adorable. And a lot of people have taken to him too. So let's continue. Let me get a better angle now. Just bear with me. You guys can see everyone who's tuning in for the first time, and a question did pop up before. Let me just grab that. So our question is, do you work on colored prime board or white prime board?
White primed. I use ampersand gesso boards. So they're pre-gessoed, like 3 millimeter thick boards. They're really great. And I just, I work in layers, so I do full underpainting, and then I start glazing colors on top.
That was going to be my next question as far as your process goes and how you work with it. Do you have any examples of perhaps works in progress that have that underlayer?
I do. I think I have some maybe photos on my Instagram of the newest works. Of these works, I didn't photograph the underpainting stage, but that's I usually work with just white and umber paint to get the tones, and I do allow myself to change the painting as I'm adding colors, so it can change a little bit from the underpainting, but I do try to get all the elements down with the underpainting, so it helps with the process.
And another question that just popped up that relates to this is if you do detailed drawings before you make all the oil paintings.
I do sketches. It's for some paintings I might make a more detailed drawing, but for some I just start painting straight on the board. It kind of depends. If I have enough time, I do enjoy doing a full drawing, and then, but when you're working on a lot of paintings simultaneously, you kind of have to adjust the process a little bit to make it a bit faster. So sometimes I just do a little sketch and then start painting and figure out some stuff in the painting stage that I could have done in the drawing stage. but
Yeah.
it depends.
Yep. Artists have to be very efficient with time, with deadlines constantly
Yeah.
hanging around. So you find ways to work quicker. So someone else asked how you get the ideas. You kind of touched upon that, but let's go and elaborate more.
Yeah, so ideas come from everything. Like I think for all artists, they just you like what you consume, like books and movies, music, going to museums, seeing classic art, like everything around. And for this collection in particular, I took the ideas from the Victorian stories that I love.
Would you say that any of these works represent a self-portrait of you, or does your work in general, outside of course, just putting the ingredients in that you love very much?
Well, I think for most artists, when they paint people, it's kind of like a self-portrait, I think.
I think so too.
So you can see something of the artist in the character, even though they don't maybe particularly look like the artist. But I wish I was all these people in the paintings. So maybe they're kind of like a wishful self-portrait.
I think they are. I think that, you know, your complexion and your hair color especially comes out in a lot of the pieces. So I see it, and I see it a lot with other artists that we work with also, whose work focuses on depicting portraits. And they are extensions of you after all. So it makes perfect sense, whether it's obvious or not. And our next question is, have they ever come to you in dreams?
I do. I think about the paintings when I'm awake, so I'm a bit like daydreamer. So I think about these things like all the time. Maybe sometimes a little bit too much. So, but usually I don't really dream. I don't have. I sometimes have just nightmares, so I don't have very nice dreams.
Oh no.
So maybe when I'm awake, I wish I was like dreaming like imagery like this, but. Usually they're just like daydreams. I think about them all the time when I'm awake.
Makes sense. We've yet to see any of your nightmares being painted. That would be quite different, but
Yeah.
have you ever painted or drawn out anything like that you've dreamt?
What like any nightmares?
Yeah. For your own sake, or just, I don't know, for other reasons?
Well, maybe that would go more into the dark art genre,
Yes.
which I do enjoy. I really like dark art, but maybe I'm not the one to paint. But I do have some. I think I have some dark symbolism. Maybe it comes from because I love like Gothic romance and I like Victorian Gothic stuff. So I do sometimes have a bit more darker themes like. Tombstones and skulls and stuff like that. I really enjoy that too. So in one of the paintings, there's a raven, so that's maybe a bit more dark, but still kind of sweet.
And a little skull.
So yeah.
You balance it out well. I mean, there's touches again of mystery too, and you know they can allude to something a bit darker, something a bit more ominous at times. But there's a balance of beauty, and I think a balance of hope, which the butterflies also can serve to represent. That allow the viewer to see what, you know, they're feeling and experiencing at the moment they're looking at that piece.
Yeah, and usually like a lot of fairy tales, like they're very dark if you really go to them, and I really enjoy that. So like in the imagery I paint, I always there's I try to bring a bit of the like mystery and darkness into them, because I think that's one of the wonderful things about those like fairy tale stories, and even the Victorian like Gothic novels and everything. So
yeah, it allows. Oh, sorry.
No, that was it.
Oh, I was gonna say it allows for people to kind of create a larger story and to find more interpretation in the work because of that. And like all things in life, we deal with balances and dichotomies. So there is good and bad, dark and light. And I think it's really important for artists to represent that. And how they do it is up to them. but the subtlety is there, and I think that it gives the world and the paintings you're creating another layer and a stronger dimension. And so someone mentioned Crimson Peak, which I'm sure have you seen that movie? Crimson Peak?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have the art book from Crimson Peak, and I look at it all the time. I love the costumes and everything. It's one of my favorites.
Yep, it's absolutely beautiful. And that actually leads me to another question that I had waiting about the costumery that you integrate. These particularly, are they from the Victorian period, or did you source them from someplace else?
Yeah, I definitely do take inspiration from Victorian fashion. I've kind of like studied fashion history a little bit, just because I'm very interested in it. And so I have all these like designs in my head. So I kind of I really enjoy designing the clothes on the characters. And especially this one, the luminous painting that you're filming, it has kind of I would say maybe a little bit of like a Tim Burton-esque style dress. I really enjoy his movies, so maybe I took some inspiration from those as well. So I like to mix things up, take Victorian style, but I know it's not like an exact design from that era. It's just inspired by it.
I think it makes it more interesting that you're making it your own by potentially adding other inspirational elements and kind of engineering it yourself too.
Yeah, I do enjoy that element. I like one of my like dream jobs when I was a bit younger was to be a costume designer for theater and ballet. So maybe in my paintings I kind of get to like bring that out, so I can design my own clothes on the characters in the paintings.
Absolutely. And when you are working with the human figure, are you using yourself a lot to understand poses and lighting and to kind of ground your figures in reality, or do you use other people?
I don't use models or anything, so sometimes when especially if I have like hands in the paintings, I might photograph my own hands to use as reference. So, but I don't really use reference for the human characters. More with animals, I might use a little bit more reference. Especially for this collection, I went last summer. I was in Dublin, and they have a beautiful nature history museum where they have all the taxidermy. So I took a lot of photos of taxidermy, and I used kind of those as reference.
Ah, okay, cool. I know some other artists who do the same thing. I mean, it's life.
Yeah.
And a lot of your figures
Yeah,
are quite stylized, so there's a lot of freedom as far as, what rules of gravity or, I guess just, reality, what am I trying to say? Like, things that exist in our reality don't have to exist in the paintings that you create. And so it's really nice because you stylize them so beautifully, but you're also rendering so tightly and so realistically at the same time that it's all grounded and it all makes sense, but it again takes us someplace new.
Yeah, I do enjoy a bit more like a stylized style in painting, so maybe a bit more illustrative, not more in that world than in the photorealistic world. Mm-hmm. But I try to find the balance between like the illustrative style and reality. So I'm always trying to find that balance.
Absolutely. I think that it's really important because you want the ideas to translate and to be understood and believed, but you also want to have your own mark on it. And you want to also have the freedom to go places that this, world that we live in doesn't allow you to.
Yeah.
And that stylistic rendering, of people helps, as we mentioned earlier, everyone kind of connect, because now this woman becomes a symbol or, a line of poetry or an emotion or an experience or, a semblance of someone or something. And it allows more people to kind of become tethered to that piece.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to go through the pieces again. I'm sorry about the lighting. So let's talk about the story behind this piece. So this is one of the only drawings we have in the exhibition. And she has quite an emotive expression on her face. And as she clutches that letter, I think we all kind of can feel a little bit of whether it's happy or sadness, but the letters are all kind of spiraling around her. So do you mind telling us a bit more about this story?
Yeah, so I wanted to include one graphite drawing in the collection. And yeah, this is yeah, it has a really I think like a romantic theme. So you don't kind of know, she's holding like a letter to her chest, and there's like a Victorian post box behind her. That's the design, and I think everyone can kind of interpret to themselves, is it happy or is it sad? So
Yeah.
I kind of want to leave that open.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, we think about today comparable to the Victorian era, people didn't have the means to communicate like we do now. So getting that letter from, you know, a loved one or from, you know, a romantic, you know, partner, the amount of sadness, but also joy you'd receive knowing that you have that communication, but you can't see them quite yet is very apparent in her face.
Yeah.
And I think something, especially now, we can all relate to quite well. And so going back here to the gouache and watercolor piece, is this Edgar Allan Poe inspired at all?
Oh yeah, it could be. I do really love Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah. It's, it has a lot of this painting. It has a lot of like death symbolism in it, but I also wanted to make like very. I think it's kind of like cute. It's very approachable. The raven, he's smiling and holding the flower, and just to maybe it was my way of thinking about those issues, but not to make it scary. Just make it like approachable, so I can look at it. So
yeah,
that's maybe
no,
the painting.
I don't think you could ever make something not have that sweetness to it, because between your technique, but also I think your attention to expression, you seem to work with them quite well to balance out that theme or that story that you're working with. And so someone had mentioned, let me see, it would be interesting to personify what is happening right now, or maybe the virus. If you want to answer that, you can, and then I'll briefly touch upon that as well.
What, in terms of the raven painting, or
probably just in general? And maybe if you, I mean, again, it kind of goes back to the dark art mentioned earlier. It's not an aesthetic that you work with, but someone had suggested it might be interesting to see an interpretation, perhaps by you, or I'm sure other artists too, of the current events in the world.
yeah, definitely. I kind of completed this set of paintings before everything, like what's happening now. So yeah, maybe future paintings, definitely. But for this particular collection, this was finished before like what's going on right now. So
yes, much before.
Yeah, more like from a personal experience. So.
And I mean, for me, you know, with your work and with a lot of the other artists that we work with, I don't want to be reminded of what's going on in this world. I want to be taken someplace new. And again, it harks back to the idea of, you know, like books and movies and, you know, video games and other ways where stories and other worlds can be available to us that we choose. So sometimes reality can be hard, and to be able to lose yourself in someone's painting that offers a world that's understandable, but at the same time, taking you someplace that's magical and, you know, a bit more welcoming than where you are at that time. Because it's a really beautiful and wonderful thing that art, you know, has always done for me, and I know has done for many other people too.
Yeah, I think the thing that I love most about art, and especially like imaginative art, is the element of like escapism. So that's a huge thing for me. I think what I look for when I look at art is to be able to dream and escape to another world.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. That's why I've always been drawn to your work and many of the other artists that we work with. So I think my questions have been satiated. if you guys have other questions, it's a good time to put them out there now. Eeva, is there anything else that you want to mention about the works or your show?
Well, I actually what I wanted to say is that I've been really enjoying these live chats that you've been doing with artists. I think it really it opens up the work, and it's been really interesting to see you discuss art with a lot of like the amazing artists that you have in your gallery. So that has been really interesting. I think that's like one of the positive things that have come from this situation when we have to find other ways to communicate the art. So I think that's been really fantastic.
Thank you. And it's great that you guys come out and do these things with me, because they're not easy.
Yeah.
They're really awkward. Well, like, it's awkward for me to do this, but once I start talking to you guys and seeing your faces, it helps a lot. And, you know, Joseph and I are both really sad that we couldn't have the opening and we couldn't have you come out to visit as you did last show. And, you know, this won't be the last time we do a show together. So we'll look forward to the future. But in the meantime, it is really wonderful that we have the technological means to share these pieces, because as everyone tuning in knows, these are not quick pieces. These all took a considerable amount of time and thought, and have such beauty and detail to them. And so we'll do our best on our end to make sure you guys see them as often and as much as possible, with all the you know, detailed shots and videos that we can do for this time. All the works are also on our website, and Eeva and I will continually be posting them on social media too, so you guys can have more glances. We have another question. Do you plan all this collection, or do you take the ideas as they come?
Yeah, we touched upon that a little bit earlier, but yeah, definitely I do plan the paintings that I want to make for the collection, but some ideas might change as I'm working on them. Maybe I start a painting and I realize maybe it doesn't really go with the collection, so I might change my mind in the middle of working on them. But I think it helps if you do like a general outline of what the theme is, and how many pieces will you have, and themes that you want to paint for the series. I think that helps.
I think so too. And I mean, you know our space now because you visited before, and I think that when you come out to see your show and it's hung, you know, you want to look at it and feel like it all kind of came together in the way that you foresaw. And of course, you can't plan everything. As you mentioned, you have changed some things in progress, but it's nice to kind of, I mean, I'm not an artist, so I'm just assuming, but I imagine it's quite nice to work on a collection that has these, you know, thematic qualities that tie them in all together and kind of approach one larger narrative.
Yeah, and it's a challenge sometimes. Doing a cohesive collection, it's actually a bit more challenging than one might think. It's especially if you're like an artist, a little bit like scatterbrained, you enjoy a lot of things. Yeah. So I try to stick to a theme, but then I enjoy painting different things. So I kind of like try to allow myself to not try to make all the paintings like exactly the same. So that helps me with the creative process, so I can still allow myself to do different characters and compositions and stuff like that. So, but still trying to bring them together as best as I can. But it's always like a learning process.
Always. I think that's one of the things you accept early on when you decide to become an artist, or when you accept the fact that you are an artist. But yeah, there's always a quality to your work that's very recognizable as yours, and it's your technique, it's the faces that you know, stylize, it's the personalities you put in your animals, and you know, it's a really important characteristic, I think, and you know, the aesthetic that the gallery focuses on. And even if the next series you work on has an entirely different palette and it starts to explore other stories and ideas, still at the end of the day, I think people will know it's yours. And because you have that quality to your work, I think that it allows for a quicker and a more seamless transition to connect with new stories that you explore, because you have that ingredient that's already recognizable and familiar with people who follow your work. So I think it's an awesome thing, and a lot of our artists do that. And I love it. I love being able to look at a piece and see that it's yours, and then look at someone else's piece and know that it's someone else's piece, and it's your unique stamp on the world. And I think it's really special. And kind of going back to Applejack's 86 and mentioning like the virus and it not being an easy subject, you know, it's really important for artists to depict what's going on, because our art is a reflection of today and who we all are, what we're going through. But our gallery, and I hopefully am speaking correctly on behalf of Eeva and many of our other artists, you know, again, our work is an escape from that. And while we don't document that, many other artists do, and it's incredibly important and helpful, and it's essential to document, you know, the world and the emotions and all the things we go through. But you know, what's beautiful about these pieces is, again, the ability to take us away and bring us happiness in a time where we might have a harder time finding it. So another question from Calvin. Seems like this is a storybook world. Do you think of stories to go with them?
Yeah, I do. When I'm painting them, I do think about the characters. I might come up with that story in my head, but I think that's the thing I aim for in my paintings, is that I can come up with my own story, and then other people, when they view the art, they can come up with their own story. So yeah, definitely, I do enjoy thinking about, like, maybe what the character's name is and who are they, and like what's happening. And definitely I do enjoy coming up with stories.
Absolutely. And it's, as Kevin said, after, it's the magic. You know, you are giving us the magic, and you're experiencing the magic too as you paint these pieces. And that's incredibly special. Let me see. Someone asked, any music that you play while working?
I do. I love instrumental music. So a lot of people know Two Steps from Hell. So that's like epic instrumental fantasy music. So that's like one of my absolute favorites. So I listen to that a lot. It's kind of like trailer music style.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful quality to those types of pieces, because they're representing different scenes and different emotions that are happening in the movies and in the shows.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm going to give you guys a quick look over on all the pieces again, and I have plenty of images. I have the work, so I'll be doing videos. So if anybody wants to see anything clearer, I will do my best. Just DM me or email me. Well, also, I think once we are back to being in the gallery and things return to whatever the new normal is, we'll probably do more of these, because I really like them. I think it's a great way, especially if the artist can't make it, or for those who can't make it to the opening, for you guys to get to know the artists and learn a bit more about who they are and why they create the work they do. So we're all learning from this, and hopefully we're all going to become better people and better at what we do, and find the good in the darkest of times. And so yeah, definitely impeccable details, I'd say. I'll go back in again. There's a really beautiful filigree detail over here, and the fonts of the numbers is quite awesome too. It's a noticed early on.
I do enjoy the 13-hour clock. I think it's a very mysterious thing, and it's like, what's the one extra hour? Like, what's that about? And of course, many of like fans of the fantasy genre might know the movie from the 80s, The Labyrinth. So Labyrinth with
with David Bowie.
David Bowie. So
yeah,
it has a 13-hour clock, so I just really love that, and I just wanted to use that theme in one of the paintings.
And you grew up in Finland?
Yeah, I'm from Finland. I'm here right now. So
did you have a lot of movies from the US and stories from the US that you found available to you as a young child that then paved the way for you to kind of, you know, interpret and explore these stories? Or did you kind of find them sourced later as you got older?
No, we actually, I think like most of the movies that you have in the US, we have here as well. So I saw a lot of them like on TV and stuff. So that's pretty much, I think, the same. Like, if you're interested in the fantasy genre, I think it's kind of the same inspirations, I think. So we have all the American stuff here as
Yeah,
well.
no, it's awesome. I mean, you know, so many artists, including you, that you work with are from other countries, but you've had access
Mm-hmm.
to the movies and the stories and the comics that, you know, we all grew up with here. So in addition to just the beautiful technique and, you know, the enchanting figures and stories, there is a recognizability because we've all kind of grew up loving those stories and those characters that subconsciously and consciously, you know, permeate your work. It just tightens those connections and those bonds, and it's really special.
Yeah, it's very yeah, it's very I love seeing like the same inspirations from other artists who are inspired by the same thing. So it's kind of like a way for us to like celebrate the things we love. So
Yeah, it's
I
that's
love
perfectly
that.
put. It is. And, you know, we found that the more people that we meet through the gallery, you know, our artists as well, but those that keep coming back, whether they're acquiring work or just coming back to appreciate it and meet the artists, we all have such common ground with them as far as our love for, you know, certain stories and characters and aesthetics. And it's cool because it connects people who normally would never be connected, different age groups, different backgrounds, all through the art that you guys produce. So it's really wonderful. And you know, for now, we'll be limited to social media for it, but once things return, we'll find that in-person connection again. And kind of with that being said, once things are back and we can have the gallery open, any pieces that do not sell by the time this is over with will be hung up at the gallery. So for everyone who hasn't been able to see their work in person, you'll have that opportunity before you know it.
Yeah, I'm really. I think it's important to look forward and know that things will get back to normal. We just have to um, deal with the current situation and make the best of it. And I think art helps with that. Just I think it's important to see some like normal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially on the social media, I really enjoy seeing other artists post their art, and it's like a way to remember that like things will go on and there will be more art and things will get better. So I think that's important.
Absolutely. I think immersing yourself in as much normalcy as possible helps get
Mm.
through a difficult time. And it is kind of that weird 13th hour time right now that we're in because time moves really strange. We lose track of days. They go by slowly, but they also feel like they're kind of going by fast. And before we know it, we'll all look back as better people and hopefully without, you know, too much more loss. And, you know, evolve to the next place that we need to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to mention while we're together?
Well, I just fun fact, it's the first time I'm seeing two of the paintings in their frames
Oh,
because
that's right.
I shipped two unframed paintings because I really wanted to use these black frames and I can't order them from the US here. So the most convenient way for me was to order them to the gallery and have you put the paintings in them. So yeah, thank you for filming them. They look fantastic. I really love the frame, the dark frame.
I do too. They look gorgeous. I'm always, for some reason, more partial to gold, but I think in these two pieces in particular, they serve as gorgeous extensions of that background and of the darkness that exists in these, in you know, these kind of like garden woodland type settings. So it's really quite
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, and also I really love that kind of like Victorian style frame. I do love gold frames as well. Actually, in two of the paintings, the small painting of the White Rabbit and the Daydreamer
Oh
painting,
yeah.
they have gold leaf frames. I used a local framer here in Finland, and he applied gold leaf by hand on the frame. So
Oh my gosh, it's
for two
big.
paintings I used is like this. That's like my dream frame. I wanted all the paintings to be in that, but it's kind of like an elaborate frame, so I just put two paintings in those. And actually, the red-haired girl just next to this butterfly painting, it also has it's a classic Dutch style frame, so that's also hand painted in the framing shop. So it has like this it's dark, but it has like a red undertone, and then the gold, I think it's really beautiful.
There you guys go. Hopefully you can kind of see that really nice detail there. Yeah, that was one thing that from the moment I opened up the paintings, I noticed was how beautiful the frames were, but also how fitting they were for the particular pieces. I think you put a lot of thought into which frame went to which piece, and it shows.
Yeah, I try to imagine like this beautiful Victorian house, like how would the paintings fit in there? So that's kind of like how I like to choose the frames. So I always try to go for that Victorian style and the decorative style.
I think you achieved it, and I'll admit that I did walk around with some paintings in my house and kind of hold them up because I love the Victorian aesthetic and I love your work, and it, you know, I try to have that look in my home too. So
yeah,
yep, I have one that I really love that I'm kind of hoping doesn't sell. So Joseph and I can maybe speak for her, but we'll see.
We'll see.
We did the same thing with your last show, so. Although I had other favorites, but the one that we took home I also loved quite a bit. So I'm speaking on behalf of someone who gets to live with Eeva's work, that it's really wonderfully enchanting and a very special thing to have in your home.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and so, you know, with that being said, anyone who is interested, again, we're always here to talk with you, and we love doing it. So please take advantage of that. And we also do payment plans, so especially now when maybe committing, you know, a large sum of money might be uncomfortable, we can always spread things out across many months, so it can be doable for you guys. The last thing you want to do is stress anyone out. We want to, you know, be able to contribute to taking you away from anything negative and bring you to these magical worlds that you'll just get lost in. So yeah, thank you, Eeva, for this collection, and you know, I'll try to get a good shot of everything. I'm in Joseph's studio.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone who posted questions and for your interest. It really means a lot. So, and I see some familiar names there.
Yeah, me too.
Friends. Oh, it's nice to see everyone.
I'm gonna try to get the whole group. I'm going into Joseph's studio space now, so I'm a little limited, but here you go. There is the entire collection. It's really, really stunning, and I hope that, you know, everyone who takes home a piece will be overjoyed, because I was when I opened them up, and I'm pretty confident they'll be too. And we'll be covering this more and more. So if you have questions for Eeva or myself, again, send them over and we'll try to address them. Yeah, congratulations on everything. And thank you so much for your time and for the pieces and for answering everyone's questions, including my own.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to more of these artist chats. I really enjoy watching them. So.
Thank you. Me too. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.